Donald Trump has hired the worst people, and I don't just say that because the idiotic yes men and women that he surrounded himself with have completely failed at his one goal during his presidency, which was to cover up the Epstein files, but these people are also littered throughout the Epstein files. Howard Nuttlick, Elon Musk, names continue to come out that are in Donald Trump's administration, but more importantly, in the Epstein files. And Kash Patel just made it all the much worse. And at the same time, implicated Donald Trump doing so. It is a complete mess. But like I said, it begins with what Rachel Maddow broke down. How many people in this administration are tied to Epstein? And I think it reveals a lot about how Donald Trump has gone forward with this cover-up. It's where I want to start before we get into Thomas Massie, Kash Patel, and the new implications around the release of these files, or should I say the release of these files.
And Congress really did force Trump's Justice Department to release at least some of the government's files on Trump's friend, the late convicted pedophile and child sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. And, perhaps inevitably, among the revelations in the Epstein files was this headline: John Phelan, Trump's Navy secretary, listed in Epstein flight logs. John Phelan, the billionaire art collector whom President Donald Trump appointed to oversee the U.S. Navy, appears to have traveled on at least 2 transatlantic flights with Jeffrey Epstein. The flight manifests list Epstein, Phelan, and a handful of other men, including Jean-Luc Brunel. President Trump is mentioned thousands of times in the files, as Congressman Raskin said there. Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, is also all over the files, including in the files, apparently trying to negotiate a trip to Epstein's island. The top Republican Party donor in the country, by far, Elon Musk, he's all over the files, including trying to get Epstein to invite him to what Musk called his, quote, wildest parties. And yes, the Navy Secretary, John Phelan, is there as well, flying on Epstein's plane with who knows who. But one of the people on board the plane was the French modeling scout guy who killed himself in jail when he was charged with Epstein-related trafficking crimes. There's no criminal allegations against any of these men from the Trump administration that I just mentioned, but they're all still in place in the administration and in Republican politics, at least at this hour. One guy who did lose his job in this country is the chairman of Paul Weiss, which is a very fancy, very powerful, very rich New York law firm. That law firm and its previous, chairman, Brad Karp, became very, very famous in the past year as, quote, the face of capitulation to Donald Trump in his return to the White House. Soon after Trump was sworn in for his second term, Trump, you'll recall, started threatening elite law firms with executive orders of dubious legal weight. Brad Karp's law firm, Paul Weiss, was one of the firms that was threatened. And Brad Karp was the guy who immediately rushed to the White House to try to appease Trump, to have a conversation with Trump about getting his firm off the hook. The conversation was described as beginning, quote, with a prolonged discussion of golf. And that may be where it started, but where it ended was with Brad Karp, the chairman of Paul Weiss, promising that his elite law firm, Paul Weiss, would donate $40 million worth of free legal services to Donald Trump's pet projects as a way of trying to appease Trump so he wouldn't be mean to the firm anymore.
When Ro Khanna said that there is an Epstein class in this country, he was absolutely right. I can't remember anything being more spot on. These are wealthy people who are only ever looking out for other wealthy people. And that is how our government was designed under Donald Trump. This is a cabinet full of billionaires and pedos and criminals and people trying to protect other elites. Donald Trump is redacting names in the Epstein files, not because he's a guy who just wants to look out for rich people. Sure, that is true. We know that Donald Trump loves being liked by rich people. He loves being around rich people. That is what he's all about. But he also knows that those names, if they were revealed, those Epstein co-conspirators, the people who paid him off, if those names were revealed, those would be more people to testify about Donald Trump. Why do we think that Bill and Hillary Clinton, who Donald Trump and James Comer demanded come before Congress and tell all about the Epstein files, why are they giving their deposition behind closed doors? Maybe it's because Donald Trump is terrified of what they're going to say. They didn't think that they would show up. James Comer surely didn't. But now that they are, he knows they have something to say about Donald Trump. And the same thing is true for all of the other billionaires who have had their names redacted. And that is against the law. Let us make it very clear that members of Congress coming out of the DOJ and saying names are still redacted while victims are unprotected, that is against the law. And Kash Patel only made it worse and implicated Trump doing so. Republican rebel calls out Keystone Cash over Epstein files bombshell. Republican Thomas Massie has called out FBI Director Kash Patel after newly released Justice Department documents called his testimony on Jeffrey Epstein's trafficking conspiracy into question. Kash Patel testified to Congress that the FBI had no evidence of other traffickers, Massie wrote in a Twitter post late Monday night. This is the FBI's own 2019 document listing Leslie Wexner as a co-conspirator in trafficking. Wexner's name had initially been redacted in the document, but was unredacted after Massie publicly questioned the decision to keep the identity of well-known retired CEOs under wraps. It is unclear if Patel, dubbed Keystone Cash after the cops of the silent movie fame for his bungled handling of several other high-profile investigations, knew of this particular document's existence when he testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on September 16th. But if he didn't, just goes to show he's really bad at his job. There is no credible information, none, Patel said. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals and that the information we have, again, is limited, Patel said at the time. Wexner, the billionaire founder of L Brands, which owns Victoria's Secret and Bath & Body Works, was allegedly one of Epstein's most powerful patrons and financial benefactors. He denies enabling Epstein by giving him money, access, and legitimacy over the course of their decades-long friendship. He has also denied allegations that he turned a blind eye or failed to act on Epstein's abuse of children and women. Massie also questioned the DOJ's rationale for redacting Wexner's name and then acting as if they were justified in redacting it because the document contains victim names. Tonight, they learned you can redact victim names while still publishing the other names, per our law, he joked on Twitter. Our law requires victims' information to be redacted, not information who sent Epstein torture porn, Massie wrote. The Kentucky congressman, alongside his Democratic counterpart Ro Khanna and Republican former colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene, spearheaded this effort, of course, to put pressure on the DOJ and FBI last year. So Kash Patel caught lying. Caught perjuring himself before Congress, saying we knew nothing of other individuals Epstein was trafficking to, which, first of all, without even reviewing those documents, I think it was pretty obvious that the billion-dollar trafficking operation didn't just have two people running it, that there might have been other connections, and also, how is that what Ghislaine Maxwell was charged with if there were no people they were trafficking? None of it makes sense. But Kash Patel officially has been exposed. And what also has been exposed is the fact that Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel continue to violate this law. It is not right to say that they have broken the law like it happened in the past. It is ongoing. That is what is happening now. Kash Patel is showing and showed that he perjured himself before Congress because Donald Trump was always going to redact illegally and hide illegally, still ongoing, the names of rich, powerful men that he wanted protected. His friends and people who could further testify about the crimes that he committed alongside Epstein. That was always the point. And it is why it is so important that Thomas Massie continues to keep the pressure on, as he did on CNN right here.
He said, we have just unredacted Les Wexner's name from this document, but his name already appears in the file thousands of other times. And he says the Justice Department is hiding nothing. Is that the retired CEO that you're referencing?
It is. He unredacted it after I found it. That's a problem. And I'm glad they've admitted they made a mistake by redacting that.
So you're saying it was redacted when you went in there today, and after you tweeted that, they unredacted it?
Correct. Now he's got 4 other names he needs to unredact. Did he respond to that? There's a list of 20 people. And there's 4 men in there that need to be unredacted. Here's another troubling thing that I found.
Can you say who those 4 men are tonight?
I don't think they're well known, and so if I did, it wouldn't matter, but I could probably say them on the floor of the House. But I'll give the DOJ a chance to do what they did in these 2 examples, where I've discovered something and now they've responded. I want to give them a chance to respond and unredact those 4 names. But here's another problem, big problem that I discovered. Those big black screens of complete redactions, and you go in there and look on the computer, sometimes you lift off the black ink and there's white ink redacting files. And so when we asked the people in the room who weren't responsible for the redactions, they said, oh, we think those are how the files were given to us. Now, those are 302 forms that come from the FBI. And the FBI...
Which are witness interview.
Correct.
Forms,
witness
basically.
interview forms, which would have the names of people who are implicated in crimes by the witnesses and the victims. We can't see those. Now, the DOJ can say, well, this is how the FBI gave those to us. Here's the problem with it. The legislation that Ro Khanna and I wrote makes the DOJ responsible for producing the documents, but it compels the FBI and U.S. Attorney Generals to turn over those documents. So they don't have the authority to just make random redactions. Here's another problem with the redactions. You know, the DOJ put up files and then they pulled them back down. And in December, they pulled them back down, redacted a little more and put them back up in some cases. Well, in this latest tranche, they've pulled files down. They haven't put them back up. And when I go over to the computers, I can't see the files they've pulled down. I have hard copies from where they were up on the internet.
But they're not even available internally to
Correct.
you from what you can see.
As far as I can tell.
And you don't know why that is?
I have no idea why that is. And I would hope that when I go back to the DOJ tomorrow, they'll make those files available.
You mentioned that you may be able to say these names on the House floor. For people who don't know, that's because you're protected by a clause, basically, that provides immunity to representatives and senators for things that you say in your legislative sphere for those actions. Are you willing to say those names on the floor?
Oh, absolutely I am.
When?
If that will serve the survivors. If the survivors want me to, I'll do it. But in the meantime, this is the kind of progress we need to make. We need the DOJ to admit that these men were listed as co-conspirators in their own files and then to release their own files, which it looks like Todd Blanche just did tonight.
We have to keep the pressure on. And it is not just calling these people out, calling out Patel, calling out Bondi, Blanche, and Trump. It is also putting pressure on the media to accurately cover this story. And that is why, as y'all know, and I'm going to keep on plugging it, we just launched Shift Media. We are about to hit 5,000 subscribers, which is huge. You can subscribe in the link below the top comment or click here and here to watch some great videos and subscribe. It is going to be news from Congress. It is going to be news from Democrats. It's just going to be just clips, no fluff, no fill, no nothing. It's just going to be the hard-hitting news that you need. It is important that we build liberal media out. Nothing could be more important in a time where the media is failing us. It is a project that's gonna maybe do more than clips in the future, but right now that's where we want to start. So subscribing is a great way to support this show and support the new channel. So do subscribe. I'm sorry that I'm asking so much, but it is so important we build progressive media right now. Y'all keep on fighting. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.